Hello and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, we like to talk about Tumoroubaitugedher's Loser Lover, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the concept, the lyrics and the music video to see how the song fits into the storyline as a whole. Loser Lover is a song co-written by Yeonjun himself that tells the story of a boy who is seen as a loser by the world that surrounds him but still wants to become the lover of their one and only. Now, as the boys themselves explained during the media showcase, this is a song that in many respects explores different aspects of a person's first experience with the real world. It's about them fighting the reality that surrounds them by rebelling against the norm. It's about their wish to escape with their loved one in order to save them like their lover saved them, but it's also about them learning to deal with more practical problems that in the past they never truly addressed. You see, if we compare the Dream chapter and the Chaos chapter, we can see that the two series explore two different stages of youth. If in the Dream chapter the focus was on the dreams and aspirations of kids that are still innocent and hopeful about their future, the Chaos chapter is all about them confronting the real world and becoming aware of problems that they never considered before. The magic and the bright colors of the dream are gone, and in their place we can find a grey reality that is overwhelming, disappointing and scary. So if in the past they could just use their imagination to escape their problems, now reality is catching up to them, because in the real world you need real solutions. Now in the song, the very first indication that the boys are starting to face reality can actually be found in the title itself, because as Subin explained, the $sign that they included in the spelling of loser is actually related to people's need for money. As the boys said in the media showcase, when they were younger, they thought that being happy was more important than having money. When they grew up and started working, however, they realized that people do need money to survive, so while they still resent people's excessive greed, they essentially understood that dreams and ideals don't always put food on the table. If people really want to escape their disappointing reality and build a new life with their lover, they need money to do so, and this is a realization that everyone has to face sooner than later. Worrying about money, however, is just one aspect of becoming an adult, because as we see in the video, the more people grow, the more their problems grow with them. If in the Dream chapter we were introduced to the boys facing worries that fit the particular stage of their life, now the boys are describing a situation where no matter how hard they try, life never makes them win. They keep fighting, bleeding, losing, crying, and even if they're sick of it and rebel, at the end they take it all nonetheless. You see, much like what we saw back in 0x1 Love Song, Loser Lover is a song that expresses the desperation and disillusionment that you feel when life doesn't go the way that you thought it would. Both songs deal with the themes of anxiety, depression, alienation, but also with the anger and frustration that you feel when you understand that sometimes doing your best may not be enough. The stories that Tumoroubaitugedher are telling in the Chaos chapter are dark because their generation is facing a dark stage of life, but in both songs we see that there is a light in the darkness, and that light is none other than you. Now, as I mentioned in my video about 0x1, the you that the boys are singing about can take different shapes according to the situation. While the focus of both songs is on a romantic lover, if we consider it on a more general context, we can say that you might be seen as a person that is able to lift you up when life brings you down. If on one hand you might be a lover, on the other the boys themselves might be each other's you, and in real life Moa can be the you of Tumoroubaitugedher. This is something that Subin himself has confirmed and that the video shows us as well, because if you look closely, when the boys are looking at you, they're quite literally looking at you on the other side of the screen. This is because while you essentially represents love, love can take different forms that are all as important as the next. If in 0x1 you was an angel that saved them from their personal hell and was able to melt their frozen heart, in Loser Lover you is a person that gives them the strength they need not to give up on themselves and keep going. Even if this person doesn't necessarily provide a solution to the problems that the boys have, their presence in their life helps them cope and gives them comfort. So if in 0x1 you saved them, now they want to save you by escaping this world full of pain and tears. Achieving this task, however, is easier said than done, because in the video we see each of the boys fighting their personal war with the reality that surrounds them. As I mentioned earlier, Loser Lover is not just about them facing the world of the adults, but them rebelling against it and refusing to stand by its rules no matter how much they lose in the process of escaping it. It's about them literally going off the rails and acting up because the world sees them as losers anyway, so they eventually embrace the chaos and laugh like madmen even if their reality is falling apart. Subin's story, for instance, centers around rebelling against authority. In his part of the video, we see that he's spending time with you, and in the story, we see that the girl herself is trading in Bitcoin and is actually going down. Now, this is one of the many instances where the video addresses the financial problems of the younger generations. While we have more ways of making money, we also have more ways of losing them, and in the video, the girl is doing exactly that. As the song tells us, however, when the lovers are together, it doesn't matter if they're losers, and in the video, Subin cheers you up by playing with fries. His playful attitude, however, is not appreciated by the owner of the diner, and in the showcase, Subin explained what it is. You see, in the video, Subin plays the role of a part-timer, so even if this looks like a date, in reality he works there, and the owner of the shop is actually scolding him for misbehaving. When Subin doesn't listen and the situation escalates, Subin ends up throwing fries at his boss's face, and this leads you and Subin to run away and the boss to run after them. As we see in the video, Subin protects you while they're hiding in the truck, but even if right now he's a lover, he's also still a loser because his act of rebellion deprived him of the only source of income that he actually had. Now, something very similar happens to Yunin Kai as well, because in his story we see that Kai works at a diner with a girl that he seems to have a crush on. While he's closing up the place, he sees his boss scolding his friend, and when the man puts his hands on the girl, Kai snaps and retaliates in a fit of rage. As we see in the video, he breaks them up in two, destroys the place, but when he is about to hit his boss, he stops himself and ends up running away with you. Much like in Subin's story, the duality between loser and lover is expressed in this section as well. Yunin Kai is a lover because he saves you by rebelling against authority, but he's also a loser because he loses his job in the process, but since he's with you it doesn't really matter, because him rebelling for you makes him a winner instead. Now, when it comes to Bongyu, on the other hand, we see that this story centers around him trying to deal with his difficult life by finding refuge in the virtual reality of the internet. In the story, he plays the role of an influencer who is trying to become famous with his music, and while Bongyu is the only one without a lover, we can see that in this context, Yu is represented by the moas that we see in the comment section of his live. While this part of the story doesn't show us romantic love, it shows us love nonetheless, because if we apply the Yu ideology to his storyline, Moa's presence in Bongyu's life allows the both of them to escape to a different reality that distracts them from the world that surrounds them. If we look at the comment section, however, we see that this new world is not easy to deal with either, because among the Moas that comment on his visuals and compliment him, we can also find some hate comments as well, and these comments get even worse when Bongyu's dad barges in on his son. Now in the video we see that Bongyu's father does not approve of his son's lifestyle, and while Bongyu is still alive, his dad attacks him and humiliates him in front of his audience. This event is made even worse by the comments that we see on screen, because even if Mo are sad and worried about Bongyu, his haters laugh at his abuse and tell him that he is a loser instead. This leads Bongyu to become extremely upset, so in a moment of rage he destroys all of his equipment and runs away on his bike. As he experiences his entire world falling apart, Bongyu loses control of his bike and hurts himself by falling on the ground, but in the video we see him laughing because, as the song tells us, this laugh represents him saying goodbye to the tears and essentially giving in to the chaos as he escapes his life of pain. Now, one interesting detail that is worth pointing out about Bongyu's story is that while his father is very aggressive towards him, when he runs away, Bongyu has injuries that he didn't have while he was still in his room. In the video, his father doesn't hit him, and when he looks at himself in the mirror, his face is still clean, but when we cut to him on the bike, we see a scratch on his cheek and him bleeding from his mouth. These visuals here might imply that there might be a part of the story that is actually missing, and this is where Eternally comes into play, because back then we saw Bongyu having a memory of a destined future that might actually be connected to his relationship with his dad. Back in that video, we saw Bongyu in an office fighting with a person over the magic book that we had already seen in Subin's hands, and in the scene this person tries to take the magic away and stop Bongyu from escaping. Now, if we compare these actions to what we see in Loser Lover, what Bongyu's dad does to him is pretty much the same, because by humiliating him in front of his audience, he essentially destroys his dream as well as his only way out from a difficult reality. Much like what happens in Loser Lover, moreover, Bongyu loses control in this situation, because instead of destroying his own stuff, he attacks the other person when his monster side comes to the surface. Now the reason why I think that these two scenes might be connected is because if you look closely, when we see Monster Bongyu through the night vision camera, he has the very same injuries that he has in Loser Lover as well. The right side of his mouth is bleeding and he has a cut on his left cheek, so these similarities might imply that between the scene of the bedroom and the scene of the bike, Bongyu might have gone back to see his dad, and this time things took a turn for the worse. Now when it comes to Taeyeon instead, we can say that his story is essentially about failure. In the video he plays the role of a skater who is training in a skater park with a girl that he likes, but when he tries to perform a stunt he ends up breaking his arm instead. Much like what happens to the others, his personal failure causes him to give in to his anger and frustration, but his feelings change when you come through to cheer him up. As we see in the video, it's you the one who transforms him from loser to lover, and this transformation is conveyed on screen with the girl drawing a red V on his cast. Now even if this part of the video focuses on Taeyeon, this detail is much more important than what it seems, because these visuals essentially confirm that the events that we see in Loser Lover are a prequel to what we saw back in 0x1 Love Song. If back in that video Taeyeon was already a lover, now we see the moment that you turned him into one, and this is very interesting because at first glance this order doesn't really fit with what we see at the end. As we see in the video, the story of the boys seems to end in tragedy because in the final scene the characters make a silent pact with one another and drive off a cliff to escape their painful reality by killing themselves. As we'll see in a second, however, this is not really the case because in the video the boys not only stay pretty much alive but never jump off to begin with, and in order to understand why we need to take a look at Yeonjun. At the beginning, for instance, the entire concept of the video is introduced with Yeonjun trying to withdraw money from an ATM only to find out that he has less than $2 left on his bank account. As he's about to leave, however, he notices a bag full of money abandoned nearby, and even if he's well aware that he's being caught in 4K, Yeonjun decides to take the money anyway and run away with you. Now right off the bat, this scene is very telling because if we compare Yeonjun's choice to what we saw in some of their past videos, his behavior is escalating as time goes by. If in 0x1 we already saw him stealing the car, the very first time where Yeonjun actually stole something was all the way back in Magic Island where he stole the candles on the train. If back then his crime was pretty inconsequential, however, this time around the potential consequences of his crime can lead him to jail, so what this comparison tells us is that the more the boys grow, the more their negative tendencies tend to grow along with them. Since the entire concept revolves around the idea that the boys want to save you from this world and need money in order to escape with you, however, it's also important to point out that Yeonjun commits this robbery out of love because, as they say themselves, a lover with a $sign is nothing more than a loser. While his crime is still wrong, Yeonjun has the heart in the right place because in the video he didn't go to the ATM with the intention of robbing it, but only decided to do so when he didn't have any other option and took his chances out of desperation. His story is literally the story of a young boy who turns to crime because the world that surrounds him has failed him, so while Yeonjun is still guilty, his crime doesn't make him inherently a bad person. Now, as Yeonjun himself has confirmed, the overall story that the boys are telling us here has been inspired by The End of the Fucking World, which is a show that they referenced all the way back in the concept trailer and that inspired the concept of 0x1 as well. This is a show that portrays the story of two people finding each other in the process of running away until the end of the world, and in his rap, Yeonjun used it as an inspiration to convey the sorrow of a person who is trying to fly away from his terrible reality but ends up falling instead. As we see from the lyrics, we can say that the emotions that Yeonjun is conveying in the song tell a story of love, ambition, and failure. His verse is about a person who wants to fly to eternity but falls because their wings are too broken to fly, but even in their fall, they still manage to find beauty in their failure because by sinking to the other side of the sky, they still find comfort in the idea that they will reunite with you. When this you is there, they don't care about people laughing, but rather they are happy to have fallen because their fall has led them to your ocean. If at the beginning of the verse they were desperate to escape, by the end Yeonjun expresses his willingness to stay because even if they are losers, you loving them makes them a winner instead, so it doesn't matter if they lose everything in the process because you is everything that they need to win the game that life has made them lose. Now this idea was already foreshadowed back in the fight version because back then Yeonjun had the word winner written on his shoe. This is a detail that further reinforces the idea that the you of the story can be embodied both by the girls as well as by the boys themselves, and in the video we see exactly that. You see, when we look at Yeonjun's story, we see that while he committed a crime to escape with you, his relationship with the girl is bound to come to an end despite of what he did. If at the beginning the girl is with him and they elude the police together, by the end we see that Yeonjun and the girl have a fight that foreshadows the idea that Yeonjun might have robbed the ATM for nothing. If we look at the other members, we see that the boys are hurt by the world that surrounds them and rebel against authority in one way or another. In Yeonjun's case, however, we see that the source of his frustration is the girl herself, so when we see him kicking the car out of anger, the video also shows us a sudden switch of perspective. If until the moment Yu was embodied by the girl, after they fight, Yu is represented by the others instead. But if you look closely, this scene doesn't really take place in real life, because at the very beginning, Yeonjun is alone like he was back in 0 by 1 Love Song. In the opening scene, the video introduces us to Yeonjun arriving in the same desolated landscape and wearing the same outfit that he's wearing at the end. In the scene, Yeonjun cries by himself in a moment of desperation, and the fact that Yu is nowhere to be seen and that his vest has devils on it implies that this scene takes place after he broke up with the girl and his devil side has already come to the surface. His desire to fly away, however, is already foreshadowed by the necklace that he's wearing, because even if we see devils on his shirt, his necklace has the shape of a wing, and this is a contrast that reminds us of the duality between the angels and the devils as well. Even if back in that song the boys told us that they could be both, in 0 by 1 they also told us that they couldn't get into heaven because there's no place for them in there, and since in the story 0 by 1 is a sequel to Loser Lover, this is the video where we see the boys giving in to their devil's side by fighting with the outside world. What this song is showing us here is the boys' ultimate downfall that they experience while trying to fly, and in this context their flight is a metaphor for their escape, because while the album is called Fight or Escape, in the concept trailer the word escape was replaced by flight instead. You see, Yeonjun's wish to fly to eternity here is nothing more than his wish to escape his reality to reconnect with the eternal world of his dreams. That is the world of his youth and the magical place where the boys can do whatever they want, but since their youth is slipping away and now they need material things to escape, the boys end up falling because they are losers in this game of life. In a parallel between 0 by 1 Love Song and Loser Lover, however, we see that while the boys are sinking alone in this world of ice, the boys cannot stop thinking about you, and this is because you are their one and only, as well as the only person that is able to bring light into the darkness. Even if this person might not be with them thinking about you gives them comfort and makes them think that this love is real, so it's no surprise that Yeonjun finds beauty in his fall, because by falling he can reunite with the others and stay with them for eternity. If in 0 by 1 Love Song Yeonjun tried to escape his life by going on a fantasy journey with the others that also caused him to sink into the black hole of his own mind, the Loser Lover essentially portrays his jump, that is the flight that he experiences in the process of escaping his reality in order to find refuge in his imagination. If you look closely, if at the beginning Yeonjun is alone, at the end the others appear when we see a blue hour in the sky, so while he's sinking alone in his personal hell, the boys are his angels that bring him to their hometown by flying to the other side of the sky. After losing everything, Yeonjun finds ultimate freedom by running away with his friends in a grey car beyond this fucked up world, and since in this place they can make their own rules or have no rules at all, the boys throw money away because in the world of Dream, money doesn't mean anything and they're always winners. This means that when at the end we see the boys driving off a cliff, they don't really do it in real life, but it's a scene that represents Yeonjun finally escaping his world by attempting to fly with the broken wings that he has. Even if in 0 by 1 we saw that his jump will lead him to get lost in his own darkness, in the moment this flight brings him joy, and this is because he's falling to the other side of the sky, which is none other than the dream. Now, as many of you might have noticed, this scene has been inspired by Thelma and Louise, which is a movie from 1991 where two women escape their miserable life, become criminals, and end up making a suicide pact to escape the police that is about to catch them. Much like in our story, Thelma and Louise are losers and lovers at the same time. They live a terrible life, they become criminals because society has failed them, but find comfort in each other nonetheless. So when they fall to their death, this death is the ultimate rebellion because it allows them to escape their life of pain and gain a type of freedom that they never experienced before. In Loser Lover, the concept is exactly the same, but instead of a real death, the video is showing us a flight that is leading them to a world with no rules. As I already mentioned in my 0x1 video, this scene was already foreshadowed all the way back in the Dream Chapter Eternity comeback show, because in the runaway VCR we saw a grey car flying in the sky and crossing over to the other side when the sky meets the blue ocean. This is the same thing that we saw in Magic Island, as well as the blue ocean that Yeonjun mentions in the lyrics, and as he says himself, this is your ocean, that is a place where Yeonjun and you can reunite and be together for eternity. If in the past this place was identified as a magic island, in 0x1 this magic island took the shape of the hometown of the angels, and this is none other than their dream world, because in that place the boys are each other's angels, even if in the real world people think that they're devils. As we saw back in their debut, they are each other's crown. When they are together, the horns on their heads become a crown, because while the world treats them like monsters, the boys are each other's salvation, and the same thing happens in the Chaos chapter as well, because while in reality they are losers, when they are together they are lovers, they are winners, and save each other from their personal hell. All in all, we can say that the ending of Loser Lover is showing us the boys trying to reconnect with their youth by losing themselves in their imagination. Since in Blue Hour we lost the summer and way home, the boys said goodbye to the summer of their youth to enter the autumn of their maturity, Loser Lover shows us the ultimate rebellion, because by jumping off the cliff, the boys are crossing over to a world where they can be young forever. So that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!